they would die in their sins. Then we go to John 1:1. We have already seen many references to the deity of Christ in the New Testament. John 1:1 is certainly not the only place. But the prologue of John, John chapter 1, verse 1 through 18, is a tremendously crafted presentation that John intends us to use as a lens through which we look at the rest of the gospel. We are told in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And archein ha logos kai ha logos ein prostan theon kai theos ein ha logos. Here you have the Greek text. In the first phrase, archein ha logos, in the beginning was the Word. The verb there is in the imperfect form. It's the verb of being, and it does not point us to any point of origin. In other words, as far back as you push the beginning, the Word is already in existence. The Word is eternal. Secondly, in the second phrase, kai ha logos ein prostan theon, the Logos has an eternal relationship with God. It is a face-to-face relationship, a communicative relationship, and it likewise had no beginning. It is eternal. And then finally, the third, and for some reason controversial among some people, phrase, kai theos ein ha logos, and the Word was God. This is describing the nature of the Logos by placing theos before the verb and not having an article before it. It is describing the nature of the Logos. However, my opponent this evening has attempted to address John 1:1 in his recent book. And he says, for example, on page 18, however, the first instance of theos is preceded by ha, which makes the reference in it to the God. Now, this is simply inaccurate. The first appearance of theos is in the accusative singular. It's ton theon. It is a simple misunderstanding of the function of Greek articles to think the presence or lack of the article tells us we are talking about the God or a God. Greek articles are very, very rich. And just as the English article is not identical to the Arabic article, neither the Arabic article, English article, Hebrew article, in any way, shape, or form can even get close to the Greek article, which is extremely complex in its uses in that language. He also said, number 2, but the second instance is not preceded by ha, which makes the second theos merely a God, end quote, page 18. This again is completely inaccurate. No one who actually reads the language and has translated any significant amount of Greek will make this kind of claim, as common as it might be on internet websites. Let's look at the truth of this last phrase. What we have here is what's called an anarthrous preverbal predicate nominative. Do you remember your 8th grade grammar class? You probably slept through that. I'm sure you all know exactly what that is. If we were to put the article in the first line here on the screen, I've put kai ha theos ein ha logos, which evidently is what my opponent believes would have to be there for this not to be a God. The problem is, if that's what the text read, it is making God and Logos an equation. Everything the Logos is, God is. Everything God is, the Logos is. But the preceding phrase had just said the Logos had eternal relationship with God. So that would be an inherent contradiction. What it says is very, very clear and very, very compelling. So what about the translation, a God? It is simple ignorance of the Greek. The Greek article is very, very rich. There are 282 anarthrous, that is without the article uses of theos, in the New Testament, and nobody could begin to translate the New Testament in any meaningful fashion and translate every one of those as a God. It would make mincemeat out of the text. Note some humorous examples, for example. Luke 2:14, if we were to follow this rule that theos without an article means a God, glory to a God in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased. Or Matthew 14:33, and those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, you are certainly son of a God. But we don't even need to go there. All you have to do is just go a few verses down from John 1:1. And if we follow the rule that if a noun doesn't have an article, it's a something, then we would have to translate John 1:6. There came a man sent from a God, a name to him was a John. Obviously, you cannot translate the language in this way. And to say that the lack of the article in John 1:1c means a God simply means you cannot read Greek. And you have never translated any other text relevant to this particular subject. So at the end of that prologue, you have the tremendous statement from John 1:18, no one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. And here you have the term monogenes. Monogenes means unique. It does not come from genao, which means to beget. It comes from genos, genes, the type or kind. All modern scholarly lexical sources agree on this issue. And here Jesus is called the unique God, or as this translation has it, it is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart. This is a restatement of what we had in John 1:1. Also in that prologue, you have this wonderful text, and the Word became flesh. That Word which was eternal became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw His glory. Glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. Ha logos sarx agenata. The Word became flesh. He did not cease being the Word. But as we saw in the Carmen Christi in Philippians 2:5-11, He takes on that human nature.